What's cracking, guys? Omar Isaf here, back with another video, back to talk about everyone's favorite lift, the belt squat. Okay, we're at a weightlifting gym, but we're talking actually about deadlifts today. We're talking about how, for a lot of people, I would actually advocate their foot position to be a little bit wider, and we want to talk about the knees. We want to talk about the hips jamming up into the acetabulum, where you have the femur, when you try and move back, where you see a lot of people starting kind of from a shitty position. And what ends up happening is that the lockout becomes harder. Why? Well, they'll choose perhaps a narrow stance. They don't push the knees out, so they're like this. And if we get a side angle, Severin, what you'll see happen with people is they try and get into a straight back position, but when they pull, because this position right here is uncomfortable, they can't load up the hamstrings, the posterior chain. From here, when they pull, they'll kind of lean and round forward, and then from this position to lockout, it's a terrible situation where it's extra pressure on the glutes to lead to that hip extension. Instead, we want to have a strong position. And I think there is that allure of seeing some very strong pullers. They'll pull conventional and they'll have a more narrow stance. But for wide hip boys and for, I would say, a good portion of individuals, I'd advocate the first thing, which would be to push the knees out in order to let the hips sit back, and then two, a slightly wider stance. So let's break this down. For most people, what you want with the deadlift, a little bit of thoracic rounding is okay. But if you're a beginner, if you're learning the movement, you really need to learn the basics first. You want that flat back. So if you start up right now with a narrow position and you just put your knees perfectly forward, your feet, you have no outward rotation, so you don't feel anything in the glutes. You're trying to load it up and you feel you always get jammed up. So once again, in the femur, which happens for a lot of people, this position right here is a lot weaker because you're probably gonna tip forward. You can't feel your hamstrings being loaded up. The first thing that you want to try and do, there's three things, but the first thing from this position, if you're like, you know what, I'm a narrow stance puller, it's just my identity. You do you, but start with this, try this. So if your knees were forward to start, open them up by pushing out and feeling your glutes a little bit. And this should allow you from here, and we'll show a side angle afterwards, from here it'll allow you to sit your hips back a little bit more. This is a better position. You'll probably feel it more in your glutes. And that's a lot of people when they say with the conventional pull, I don't really feel in my glutes. You're probably not doing it optimally. Or you don't feel it in your posterior chain, you just feel it in your lower back. You want to sit back. In order to do that, we open up the hips. So it's okay if your knees are wider out than over your feet, so they're wider like so. And then I do like that cue that I did here in starting strength of your forearms, where your knees are touching your forearms. So that's the first cue right here, to create more space and create a stronger position. Okay, so knees are out now, but it still, let's say, feels a little funky. Well, the next thing we could try and do is rotate our feet just 5 degrees. And that's the same idea of externally rotating with the hips like so, to create that space so it doesn't jam up the femur into the hip socket, the acetabulum. From here, we could try that out. So that's 5-degree rotation. You should already feel as you're, remember, slightly over the bar, exerting that pressure. Okay, do I feel this a little bit more? How's the pull feel? Okay, it feels better, but maybe it doesn't feel still exactly optimal. This is where the wide stance boys come in. Move it a shoulder width apart. So from here, if we're starting like so, just move it a little bit wider. So you do first 2 steps. So here, knees are going to be open, and then feet we rotate out, come over the bar. So we're leaning a little far forward. And from here, you should feel your back not only being flat, and once again, we want to start from that strong position. It should be easier once we begin the pull to lock out, because now this position here, to lock out from here to here, where we're over the bar, is a lot easier than if your back's rounding. And I notice this often because I think we become attracted to certain types of pullers. We're like, oh, that's some clean form. But if you're not built like that, if your morphology is different, if you can't execute it with the same technique, you have no business doing that whatsoever. You want to try and optimize your technique for yourself. So for the deadlift right now, just think of those 3 things. If you're a narrow stance, widen a little bit, open up your knees, and then rotate your feet out. And that's the simple tip right there. You want to start the pull in a strong position. So it makes no sense if you're bleeding power here and it feels hella uncomfortable and you're just jamming everything up, and your pull, your initial, when you start it, you notice, oh, you lean forward, and you get in that cat position. Fix it, open the knees, rotate the feet, and consider going with a slightly wider stance, and you too over time should feel that you have a stronger pull. Anyways, quick deadlift tip. You guys seem to enjoy these, where we just give kind of a technique, a case study of a certain movement and break something down. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like the damn video, and I'll see all you guys, my rascals, in that next one. Peace.
Eat your vegetables, eat your vegetables, eat your fucking vegetables.